Today we're going to look at how to write an exponential function equation. So whether you're given a table or a graph, you should be able to write the exponential function that describes what's happening. So an exponential function is written in the form y equals a times b to the x power, where a is your y-intercept. I know it's weird because that's not the way it was in a linear function, but it's the way it is for exponential. So the first letter A is your y-intercept. B is going to be your change in y as a multiplication. It's easy to forget about the fact that it needs to be a multiplication. We'll do an example where you'll see what I mean by that, but make sure it's your change in y as a multiplication. So this first one, the table, first thing we need to look for is our y-intercept. And we know that in a table, to look for our y-intercept, we have to find where x is 0. So same thing is true with exponential functions. Where x is 0, the y is 3. So that tells us right away that our y-intercept is 3. Pretty easy to find. The y-intercept is usually the easiest thing to find. So then for our b, we have to look at what is happening with our y's. How do I get from one to the next? Our x's are changing and steady just by going up by 1 each time. So the y's we need to look at and see what's happening. So to get from 3 to 12, the multiplication that needs to happen is I need to take it times 4. 12 to 48 times 4. 48 to 192, again times 4. 192 to 768, it's again times 4. So the change that's happening as a multiplication to y, it was your b, which equals just 4. We don't have to put in times 4, it's just the 4 is the number we're looking for. So then all we have to do is plug them in. Y equals my y-intercept, which is 3, times parentheses 4, and then x is always the exponent. Okay, so remembering that we can't simplify this by taking this 3 times 4, saying it's y equals 12x. It's not the same thing, because when we go to evaluate this function, what we're going to do is plug a number in for x, and that exponent has to happen first. We have to do 4 to the 0 power and then times 3, 4 to the first power and then times 3. We can't do the multiplication first. So this is as simple as it gets. Okay, so looking at the graph, we have to do kind of the same process. We have to look for the y-intercept and the change in y as a multiplication. Sometimes this is a little bit more difficult because it's not the way we're used to looking at it. Okay, so we're gonna first look for our y-intercept, and y-intercept is just where our line crosses the y-axis. So this one crosses at -4. So our y-intercept is -4. So then when we look at, okay, what is the change in y as a multiplication? We're going to read the graph from left to right. So we're looking at the farthest point on the left that we can see, which is this one. We're looking at what change happens to get it to the next point to the right. So we're looking at the y part of each of those points. So we have -4 and -2 are our y. So we're thinking, what do I need to do to -4 to turn it into 2 as a multiplication? So we can't just think of this as, oh, well, I need to divide by 2, because it has to be a multiplication. So we are thinking, all right, what do I multiply by? Well, this time you're going to multiply by 1/2. So remember, when we're thinking of it as a multiplication, instead of saying divide by 2, that's the same thing as saying times 1/2. Just like if we said we're going to divide by 3, that would be like times 1/3. So to double check that we're right, we're going to look at how to get from -2 to -1, which again is half. So times 1/2. And then -1 to -1/2. -1 times 1/2 gives us -1/2. So that is the change in y as a multiplication is 1/2. So when we write it, we get y equals -4 times 1/2 to the x power. Again, remember the x is always the exponent. We can't do this multiplication because it doesn't get simplified. Sometimes we do see problems that don't have a number written out front. It's just a number to the exponent. If your y-intercept is a 1, you can go ahead and write it like that, but it doesn't hurt to write the 1 out front, and even though it can be simplified.